Have you ever done an apples-to-apples comparison of what we do in the private lesson studio world with the music programs in public schools? Today, Mandy and I are speaking with Kristin Blanchard, a middle school band director with over 25 years of experience in the classroom. Kristin's watched how music education has evolved in that time, but also how her approach has changed over the years. We dive into how she gets middle schoolers genuinely excited about music and why fun isn't the enemy, but an ally of learning, and also how private teachers and school programs can actually work together. This conversation challenges some long-held traditions in music education, but in the best possible way. Stay tuned. If you're a guitar instructor and you've used one of the dozen or so popular method books, you've probably noticed that gap between what's in the books and what students actually want to learn. Most guitar students want to play their favorite songs, and that means strumming, chord changes, timing. If that stuff is even in those method books, it's usually way in the back. I put together the exercises in Complete Guitar Strumming to cover the foundational concepts that all guitar students need, but in a practical way that applies to their goals, which is playing their favorite songs. For instructors, the book comes with an instructor companion guide that walks you through best practices for teaching. I even have training videos that I've used with my own staff that you can access as well. The guide and the videos are free for anyone who wants to use the book for teaching. If you want to get really deep and understand the origins of the book, you can go listen to episode 50 of this podcast or just head over to rockschoolproprietor.com/book for all the details. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. My name is John Kazicki.
And I'm Mandy York.
And our guest today is a middle school band director with over 25 years in public education, the conductor of the Civic Youth Ensemble program through the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and in 2024 was awarded the Michigan School Band and Orchestra Teacher of the Year, Kristin Blanchard. Hi, Kristin. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing great. So I will kind of start by saying, Kristin, you teach at the middle school that is within walking distance of my lesson studio and Mandy's studio. Mm-hmm. And now, Mandy, with your students, they ultimately will end up going to Kristin at some point in middle school.
Yeah.
My students sometimes show up, and over the years, I've heard oh, Miss Blanchard, she's the best. And then from the parents, she's the best. Miss Blanchard's the best. So I'm going to prop you up right there a little bit. But we're going to talk about your experience today in the classroom, and I think approaches to practice and performance and all those things. But first, what's kind of on my mind is when you get a fresh group of, say, sixth graders in your band room, you presumably don't know if any of them have experience. You don't know who's going to be a player who's maybe drawn to music naturally and their instrument, or maybe they're just they're in band because their parents said they had to be in band and they're going to bounce as soon as they can. But regardless of those circumstances, you don't know any of that stuff. But you have to, I'm assuming, present the material in an engaging enough way so that over time you can find out that information, but also the kids can engage with music in a way that does get them excited and does get them interested. So again, you draw that out of them. Maybe a big question, how do you do it?
Oh my gosh, that is loaded. For me, it's really easy because band is so new for them. They've maybe been in music or music lessons or had some music training, but I always start from very basic and I assume nothing. And then we kind of build from there. So I'll usually do a show of hands who's had some, piano lessons or things like that. I know because they come from the elementary schools, and our elementary schools have very good teachers that they come with some knowledge. Sometimes the language is a little bit different. So we try to bring everything together so that it makes sense for my class classroom. But when you have shiny objects like instruments, it's pretty exciting. So it's pretty easy to get them, locked in and excited really fast. And I work very fast paced. So I think that helps too. So you get the kids who are already excited about band, whether it's because their brothers or sisters or parents or whatever the reason is that they're in band, but also because it's like this new novel thing. Never once before this, usually in 6th grade, did they have an experience like this. I usually don't get kids who've had prior training on their instrument, maybe once in a great while. So generally they're coming in and they're already pretty excited and pumped up. So it makes it easy.
So no prior training on whatever instrument that they're playing in band, but some of them, maybe they've had piano lessons and that information is going to transfer. So I guess, is there a focus on, obviously you've got to teach all the basics, right? But is there a focus on presenting things in a way that regardless of the nuts and bolts of the music, they get excited about it?
Yes, I make everything super fun. So even, we're talking about starting band in a couple weeks. And the original thing you do is you walk in, you're learning how to be in my classroom, in my space, but then we work on how to breathe because most of the instruments you have to learn to breathe properly in order to play. So we do all kinds of fun stuff, and I have toys and I use candy and I make it as fun as possible because they are kids, when you're dealing with 6th graders, especially, they get so geeked about like all the fun stuff. So I have a lot of like toys and extra little things I bring out. And in that first couple weeks, even when you're talking about something as boring as breathing or posture, I have like little toys to teach posture, and we do little games and things like that. You have to keep it super fun, even when you're doing kind of what seems to be mundane, tasks or information. It's super important in order to play the instruments, properly later. So you have to infuse fun. You have to. That's bottom line.
Right. And you're very good at that. I know that. I should say that we've known each other for a while. My husband is also a middle school band director. You guys have worked together. My daughter's been in your band for a couple years. So I know that Miss Blanchard is very fun. You do a great job. But even in my world, the early childhood world, when I have parents that ask about, okay, when can I start piano lessons? When's too early? And recommending wanting me to recommend teachers, it's the same thing. If it's not fun, it's not going to go well. They have to be presented this musical journey like in a very engaging and fun way so that they have success down the road. So,
yeah.
Yep.
I just don't think it doesn't have to be so. I think of it as old school, but our old school methods of teaching band were so militant, and most of us nowadays don't subscribe to that method. There are some people that get stuck in that kind of mode, but I just feel like there's no reason for that. Like if they're going to be excited about music and shouldn't music be fun and exciting, then I have to make it fun. And so I try every little thing I do, it's with a little bit of fun, or something is cute or something is silly. And if I make it like that, they buy exactly what I'm selling, so that's part of the whole being a middle school teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kristin, you mentioned the old school, I guess, philosophy and being militant about it. Where do you think that came from, and like, why did it have to die? I mean, I think it should have died.
Yeah, it's dying a slow death. The whole idea of wind band developed from the military. So it's not that I think this.
So it's literally it's literally like this is how we do it because it's
our
for the
heritage
military.
Is military. So when you think about like the old John Philip Sousas and when music came to America, I mean that's the intention was it was first like Civil War marching bands, So the military style and the military like just that whole vibe is kind of how school bands, like that was I don't even know the words I'm looking for. Like that laid the groundwork for how to teach band in school. But we know better now, and that is still, I think, sort of woven into the fabric of what we do to some extent, that tradition. But when you're teaching middle school kids, obviously child development, we're not going to do it military style. That's just not going to get you anywhere. So, are
And
there
I think even the literature, right? The
yeah,
literature is evolved and changed for this group of kids.
huge, huge evolution there, which is the nuts and bolts of what we do. We get to pick the music, and when you pick the right music, and there goes the fun part again. When you're infusing fun into it, it doesn't have to be so rigid all the time.
So I'm always a proponent of kind of getting to the core of what makes us excited about music, right? So like the idea of playing music is fun because of how it makes you feel, not as just a player, but as a listener as well. And everyone can experience that side of music, whether they're a player or whether they're a listener. But I do think it's interesting that these older traditions have in all sorts of subtle ways, whether it's in the middle school classroom or whether it's in the private lessons or in the rock school. Well, maybe not so much in the rock school, but there's all these subtle little things that are sort of implied, like how you have to practice and you have to log time, you have to log hours, and it's almost like these weird expectations. Well, I know, Mandy, you were going to kind of present, maybe now's the time to present the question about practice.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we talk a lot about on the podcast, John and I have. And because there's a lot of different philosophies out there. And I come from a traditional background. You do too. John is less traditional rock and roll guy. But can you tell us a little?
To be fair, no. I did band in school.
That's right.
I had private piano lessons, which were very much traditional. So it's not that I don't come from that school. I just rejected that school when I got to the point where I could make a decision about like, okay, how do I want to approach this and how do I want to continue with it?
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate Kristin's approach. So can you tell us a little bit about that in your classroom, Kristin?
My approach to practice is, again, it's kind of fallen away from, and I've changed my philosophies a lot throughout the years. I know you said I've been teaching over 25. This will be my 30th year. And so, oops, there goes my camera. My 30th year teaching. And so obviously there was going to be a lot of choices I've made throughout the years and judgments and getting to know families and getting to know kids better and just getting to know how it's comfortable for me. So yes, I used to do practice logs. I used to make them log their time and turn them in and get a grade, and they would lie, I'm sure, and just fabricate things or whatever. And I like accepted that. Like that was just what we do. And then over the years, obviously I've changed my attitude, and my attitude now about practice is it's pretty loose. And I think sometimes people think that that's crazy, but I'll have parents, especially beginner parents, that, that old attitude of we've paid for this instrument, we're investing in this instrument or these supplies. Therefore it's like transactional, like you must put in this much time. And my attitude is always with my beginners, you don't know enough to practice 30 minutes a day. Like that's absurd. Like you don't even know enough information for you to do what your parents are expecting you to do. And so I will tell them flat out, please don't put a time, like some sort of weird time abstract limit on how much you should be practicing. It needs to make sense. And I make it so fun for them that they're going to want to practice. So the motivation has to be different. It can't be like, because this piece of paper says you must have 30 or 60 minutes or whatever it is. And so I motivate through the music. If they don't practice, then I just say, listen, it's going to show up in the classroom. You may not need to practice as much as, little John next to you or whoever. You may need to practice more. It might depend on your instrument. It might depend on your aptitude for music, whatever it is. But if you don't choose to work towards it, then it's just going to show up in the performance. And it could be fine for you. And that might have to be fine for me too. And then the older they get, it really comes down to like what performances we have. And if they're getting the job done during my class, that's good enough for me. And so I've adapted this different kind of attitude about it. Whether you're going to be a recreational musician, come to my class. It's every day, 55 minutes. You'll get what you need. But if you want to go a step further or 2 steps further or 4 steps further, we can go there, but I'm not going to force it and I'm not going to require it. I'm not going to make a big, hairy deal about it. And I'm not going to attach a grade to it. So And that has been a complete 180, right, from where I started 30 years ago.
I so appreciate that. Yeah, that's great. Like you said, when they're beginning, they don't have enough information to practice for 30 minutes. That's smart. But you're making it fun for everyone. Those that are self-motivated will do more practicing than others. And like you said, some aptitude is different, so they're going to need different things.
Yep.
You're keeping it fun for everyone. And then I think, I mean, am I wrong? You do offer, other things outside of your classroom, because some kids will be more driven. And if so, here's what you can practice. And here are different, I don't know, ensembles or events that you can participate in to push yourself more.
Yeah, if you have an opportunity, if I know about an opportunity, I'm going to present it. And if kids take me up on the opportunities, which there are a boatload, available outside of school, then that's where they will tend to want to focus all their energy and time. And then it's up to me to help them kind of get to those, meet those goals and successes. And if it means, and I'll even say to them, you don't need to practice your band music. We're doing that every day in class. Like, there might be moments that I'm like, yeah, these few measures you could afford to use some work. But if you want to try out for this honors band, or if you want to be a part of solo ensemble, or if you want to try out for all state band, here's everything you need. And those kids will be the go-getters. Those will be the ones who'll put in the extra time. And those are the ones who are a little bit more serious about it. And that's fine. That's great. You're my leaders in class. It's cool.
Kristin, you mentioned that approach to practice and your thoughts. You kind of did a 180 from how when you started. And was there like some sort of rationale, or was there a moment, or what made you, change your mind? Or was it as simple as like, well, I'm doing it like this because I'm a young teacher and this is what I'm supposed to do? And then, I guess what was your motivation there?
Gosh, that's a good question. I don't remember there being like a catalyst. I just remember in the first few years, I vividly remember being really against kids like picking up pop music to play and like finding like Disney music or fun stuff. And then there was this moment that I was like, why do I care what they're playing? If they're practicing their instrument and they're putting their trumpet to their face, I should be thrilled with that. So then it kind of evolved, right? Over the course of a few years, I sort of lightened up. And especially as music majors in college, like it is this wild, we're in the practice room practicing several hours a day. Like, to me, that's what it is. So it took a minute, I think, to get out of that mindset of being a school teacher. Like, I am not in conservatory mode. We're not in like, I must practice 6 hours a day to be first chair in orchestra mode. Like, I had to change that whole mindset. That shift had to happen, but it took a couple of years. So I really thought that they all should be practicing all the time, and they should all be practicing like this legit concert music. But over the years, it's like, if you want to play, here's some Christmas music, knock yourself out, but they're playing and they're practicing. And why shouldn't it be just enjoyable? Why can't it be just for your family? And then I like double down. I'm like, extra credit if you give your family a Christmas concert or whatever, holiday or birthday or whatever. It should be fun. It should be part of just what you do. And it shouldn't be because I said so. Like, I want them to be motivated by the music. And if you're being motivated, you're motivated to do it on your very own. So yeah, it took a minute to get there, but.
Okay, so now I'm curious because you mentioned something, like, I'm not a music major, right? So I'm sitting here between two music majors who had very similar requirements in college. And I guess, Mandy, what Kristin just said about like that idea of practice as being something that you had to do in college, and that's just the way it was, does that ring true for you too?
Oh my gosh, I relate so much to everything that she just said. So much. And I'm not a classroom teacher, but I mean, I think I've mentioned this to you before, John. When my daughter, we did a little bit of piano lessons, and then she wanted to take guitar lessons, and I loved what you were doing, and I took her to your school, but I was a little bit like, but we should be learning Mozart. Shouldn't we be learning Mozart? So I had to let go and open up a little bit and realize, just like you, Kristin, she's developing a love for music and the ear training that she's doing, and she can play and she's learning how to improvise. I can see with my own little guinea pig here at home, my daughter, like the music learning that's happening through electric guitar and rock band. It's all music learning, you know? So yeah, we come from these traditional and strict backgrounds, but when you're taking it out into the world, you do have the band geek, you've got the cheerleader, you've got a rock star. Like, you have all of these different personalities and different abilities in your classroom. You're not all going to get them, learning these traditional band marches. You need to reach them all, and everything you said, it just rings true. And it's amazing how you have been able to open up and be able to reach those kids, and they adore you.
And me saying it out loud, like, I'm really proud of that, because I think so many teachers stay in their lane and they do what they're comfortable with. And that's never been me as a person. I've never been one to just status quo. Like, I always want to get better. I always want to improve. I always want to evolve. And then to be able to say that as a teacher, like, over 30 years, that I really feel like I've changed a lot, like, just the way I think about it. But, you were saying too, Mandy, is not only just the kids, but you're impacting their family too, and how families have changed over the years, and how just our society has changed. Like, we have to change with that. We have to become, like, cool with and okay with, just their family dynamics, because those kids are going home to a family, and what is their expectation of how all this should be. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It is interesting, because I think what this makes me think about is adaptability with culture. And when we're talking about music, we really are talking about culture. And then, Kristin, you tied in the family as well. Mm-hmm. And there's changes in culture related to family. There's changes in trends related to education and
technology.
Yeah, and technology. But in so many aspects of music, and I think back to my piano lessons as a kid, it's like, well, I even had to ask Tim Topham, who's a piano instructor, on an earlier episode of this podcast, well, why do we just kind of accept method books as the way to go for piano lessons? And I didn't really know. I honestly was like, why? And he explained to me, well, it goes back to how music was taught like hundreds of years ago, and you had a book, and that was the only way to do it, because there weren't recordings, right? There weren't audio recordings, and it just sort of stuck, is what he said. And it's funny how, yes, these traditions, while they work, haven't necessarily all been updated to reflect how culture has changed.
That's interesting that you're talking about it like that, because as you're saying that, I can't imagine not using written, books or theory or music to teach, because I don't know any other way. But that being said, I've also never been trained by ear. And that's like a gift that I wish I had. I wish I could just pick up an instrument and just be really comfortable playing without anything in front of me. It's necessary, but is it like the only way? No. Like, I wish I had that. I'm always very envious of people who can just play.
Well, but in a classroom situation with 30 plus kids, I just don't see any way you could do it without method books.
No, for what we do, you can't. I feel like I wish there was another, and I do, there you can teach improvisation and things like that, but it's just not conducive to, my situation. But I think it's an important part of what we should be able to do, that I was never trained to do.
Well, so Mandy, I know you had some questions, or you wanted to talk about.
I wanted to talk about performance a little bit, right? Yeah. John, your studio is performance-based. Your band program is performance-based. Kristin, you guys are always working towards the next thing. And I mean, I'm not. We're learning through play and taking the music to the families, right? But John's performances are very, I don't really want to say informal, but they're concerts, they're experiences, right? Kind of real world examples that the kids are displaying. They're not recitals, right? They're not sit at the bench or whatever and perform for everyone. Your band concerts, I have been to them. They have a formal feel, right? And I think that's how I grew up. I can speak for my husband. That's how he runs his programs, right? We're teaching performance etiquette, sitting up straight, walking in straight lines, all of those things, raising the instrument at the right moment when the conductor stands up, lifting it when the baton is, all of these little things, right? And it reminded me earlier as we were talking about changing with the times. This is something that hasn't really changed a lot, these like formalities of performance. Why are we still holding on to those, do you think?
That is a very good question. But those are things that I do like. I like that organized, not chaotic, and when, my bands are big. So you're talking 60 kids in a group. The only way I know how to do that is to be very organized and keep it, less chaos, the better. But I also think it presents nice, so I don't know. That's a good question. I think that those are rooted in tradition. Is that something that's worth changing? I don't know. I think it looks good. I think when I talk about stage presence and all those things, that's good for even other avenues. Like, it doesn't have to just apply to music. Knowing how to be on a stage or walking on a stage or looking professional is helpful for lots of things, if you think about it. So even though we do keep it real traditional in that way and formal, I think that it's still valuable and it doesn't have to be just because of band. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah. No, I was just curious your thoughts on that because I do appreciate it. I've been to school performances where it was very loose and there weren't the formalities and the very kind of professional look to them. And I don't like it as much. I think I've had conductors say, that it goes beyond just the performance goes beyond playing the music. It's how we present ourselves on the stage, right?
Yes.
I don't know.
I use the phrase "the devil's in the details," and it's all details. And if you care about the details and you really think about it, everybody notices that. And then I'll tell my students, they'll notice how you perform the minute you step on the stage. So you could be walking correctly with your instrument in the correct hand and your folder in the correct hand and all those little details. And I do feel like that translates for kids into something special because for them, they know that I've elevated them to this level and that's my expectation. And I don't find that there to be anything wrong with that. And then you can, again, transfer that over to anything in their life. If you're thinking about the details and you're putting that much care into it, then aren't you going to be better? Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's a mentality. And I think that can go across all disciplines,
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I think it does make the kids feel like they're more professional in what they're putting out there is just a leveled up.
So
I think
if I could interject, because I think that like what you're talking about, I think it's really important too. And I definitely don't want there to be, any sort of assumptions that, again, because I'm the informal guy. I don't want there to be any sort of assumptions that I disagree. Like, I think going back to what we started this conversation with, like, Kristin, you don't know who those kids are. You don't know how many of those kids are going to love your band program so much that they are going to practice every day by choice.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go on to solo ensemble and get ones across the board and then go into high school and do the same thing and then pursue playing their instrument at a higher level. So that performance that you're doing is consistent with someone who wants to take that path.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is what I'm doing with my performances just happens to be something different. But we still are looking at the details. We still are talking about stage presence. We still are talking about in this setting, when you are putting on a concert, part of your job isn't just playing your song, it's about connecting with your audience and even bringing them into that performance in a way that creates this experience for everyone, not just you on the stage or not just the people in the audience. So I think it's great.
And I want to point too that I've been to those rock school performances over the years. I've been to a few of them, and I 100% agree with you. Like, everything you do is at like this top notch 10 plus level, and it's like you're at a real rock concert, and that's the experience that you're providing. But you're doing it like you're executing it like a fine tooth comb. Like, everything is perfect. But I don't know if people would really see that, but I do, because I go to these and I'm like, oh my gosh, like every detail is in place. So no, we all agree, I think, on that piece 100%.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then the bigger picture that I didn't know if we were going to get into this, but like I think then the challenge that we face across the board is because the three of us here, we're all speaking the same language, right? And we understand the nuance in how the music is presented and how it's taught differently and maybe the stylistic differences. But if you strip all of that away, we're still talking about music.
Yep.
And the challenge that I feel like I face on a daily basis is that's obvious to us because we have years of experience in this. And we see like, oh, well, yeah, it's just music. But from an outside observer, from a parent's perspective, they don't understand how all that works. So they may need to compartmentalize, oh, well, band and orchestra is done this way. Rock music is done this way. And like, what are the rules for this? And what are the rules for the other thing? And it's like, it gets confusing and they don't see that it's like, no, it's all the same thing. It's just in how you apply it.
Yes. Different details. There's just different details for the different genres. Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead, Mandy.
No, go ahead, John.
Well, so we
I'm
talked
just thinking.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, so I want to know what your goals are for your students. We've mentioned you have this diverse group of students, right? And you're so good at connecting and giving the different students what they need. I know what my goals are for my families and my students. What about yours? I know that you don't want to go in there and produce musicians to fill all of our major orchestras in the country, and that they're not all going to do that. So
we don't
talk about that for us.
Not everybody should be a professional musician. I mean, it's not everybody, and it's definitely not the goal of like what I do. This is my biggest thing. I just want you to love and enjoy live music. That's it. If you go on in this world and you go and you watch a live performance, it could be a free performance, but what if you were to pay $35 for that performance? Whoa, even better. Just to understand and appreciate what's gone into those productions or those performances, and then to go attend it. Or you're going to have kids later, which I've had multitude of kids, kids of kids, and then you encourage your kids to be in band or orchestra or vocal music. But, for me, it's band. If you're loving what you're doing enough and appreciate it so much that you just want it to be a part of your life in some way, shape, or form later, then I've done my job. If you're seeking it out, like for me as a musician, if I'm in a new city, I'm always looking for where's the live music venue? Where can I go see a jazz trio? That's what I enjoy. But maybe you stumble upon it and you're like, we're going to, go into this place that's having this jazz music. This is awesome. Perfect. Then I've done my job because you understand kind of the other side of it, like how much work it's taken to get there. So
I love that. Yeah.
That was such a good question, Mandy, because again, I think it shows that we all have the same goals, right? Like people will tell me all the time, like, well, I don't know if I'm looking for my kid to be a professional or anything. I'm like, yeah, I know. But what we want to do is get them to love music, right? Get them to appreciate music in like a deeper way than just listening, right? And so because then they can carry that throughout their whole lives. And that is really what is important about whether it's in Mandy's classroom at 6 months old or Kristin, yours at 12 years old, or even mine even in our adult band program, right? At like 40 years old. It's like the idea is that however we do it, whatever we do, we want to make sure that the people we are working with are getting that. They're getting that music is something that they can enjoy and they can appreciate and they can participate in a deeper way forever.
I want it to be a part of their life. I want it to be like just a part of their normal life. And we can always compare this to sports. The difference with sports and teams is it's not a curricular activity in school. So thank you for, us having it in schools. But I just wish that it was on par with that. Like just something normal that you do as an adult. It's part of your life. So.
Yep. As my Miss Mandy persona, I'm always saying that music is an important part of our life experiences. We want to give that to our children. It's an important part of life. And then I would also argue that the more musical the world is, the better place it is, actually.
So, Kristin, you mentioned sports, and again, I wasn't sure if I was going to get into this one, but you mentioned sports, and I think one thing that's great about sports is if someone wants to, if someone wants to learn golf, if someone wants to learn baseball, whatever, let's use golf as an example. You go get some golf clubs, you go to the driving range, you go to the golf course, there you go. You're a golfer, right? You've done it. That's it's that easy. But with music, there is this belief, and I get this more in the private lesson world, I think, than maybe you do in the band room. But there's a belief that in order for you to do the activity, you first need to study how to do the activity for an extended period of time before you can actually, I hear it all the time. Doesn't my kid need to take private guitar lessons for a while before they can be in a band? And my thing is well, no, not really, not necessarily, And I also hear related to maybe group music classes. Well, group music classes it needs to be all guitar players, or it needs to be all piano, full group piano class. But in the middle school classroom, none of those things do not apply, right? And it's just generally accepted. Kids go into a mixed instrument class on day one, and they are playing their instrument.
Yep.
Thoughts on that?
And Kristin, tell us how many. Tell us what your largest class size is.
Yeah.
Well, my
Seriously.
first hour, I just looked at my grade book today. My first hour is going to have 64 students.
Yay,
go.
See?
So my smallest class is 54. I don't know. I could be wrong. But anyways, our beginners, we actually bring them all in and we get them started and we expect nothing. And there are going to be people who always are we might want to get them some lessons. And you know what I say? Please don't. Because honestly, I'd rather they know nothing and I teach them everything from the beginning the same exact way. That way there's no confusion. My private teacher said to do this. I'm okay. So it's actually nicer if they know nothing in the beginning levels. And they're multi-instrument classes. So we keep the brass together. And this year we're having woodwind and percussion together. But it's still a lot of instruments in one class. So it is interesting because there is this perception that they have to know something. And it doesn't matter to me. Like I said, I'd rather they know nothing. I know what I'm dealing with. It's basically a blank slate with a little bit of information that they have from previous, elementary school experiences. But you're right. There is this preconceived notion, but I don't know. For me, it seems pretty easy, but I've been doing it a long time. So.
Yeah, and I mention it because I also think in my world, interacting with a lot of private instructors, there does seem to be a bit of perpetuating that myth, right? And I don't know if it's ego or elitism or whatever, where obviously there are benefits in private lessons, that one-on-one hands-on stuff that you can dig in a little deeper, and there is potential to learn more in a shorter period of time. But then there's also a great deal of things that just can't happen in private lessons that do happen in the group environment, which is like that big aha moment where everyone's playing it together and it's like, this is it. This is the thing.
The
Yeah,
way music was meant to be played together.
when you get the goosebumps because of all that,
Yes.
you can't possibly have that experience in a private lesson. And I know this because I've done all those things, both sides of it.
Yeah.
It's just, there's something different about playing with that group, you know? And then I want to go back to what you said about the teachers and this elitism. And yes, I think sometimes we get it's back to that conservatory mindset. Like, you must do it this way. And these are the things we have to teach you in this order and blah, 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 blah. And I had a student who wanted to start as a 7th grader or moved into the district or something a couple of years ago. And I was going to have her get a few lessons, you know, over the summer. And the grandma or mom or whoever was like, yes, we're going to do this. I go, that'd be great. I can get her up to speed after that. But if there's just like how to open the case and how to put things on and put things together, if you could get that taken care of, I can do the rest. And the private teacher seemed a little bit confused by that, like really thought this person should have way more, like they're not going to be ready for your band. And do you want to know something? That child was fine. And it's all about what the expectation is. Like, for me, the expectation was not she was going to be a virtuosic musician in 10 weeks. Like, that's not what we were saying. But I wanted to get her enough to where we could, you know, immerse her into the program and it'll all shake out. And quite frankly, if you think about it, these kids are sponges, right? It's the perfect age for all of this. Throw them in. They'll be fine. I'll get them what they need. I can work with them a little extra. They'll have friends. It's a whole group situation. But if you expect that they can't, then they won't. And so I was going back and forth with the private teacher. I'm like, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. I'm like, you don't have to worry about it. We'll worry about it on my end. You know, this child ended up being amazing and being in jazz band and doing all the things. And I didn't set any bar for her. I was just like, it'll be here. We'll get you there. But
so cool.
Yeah. But it's all about your attitude too. And I will admit that probably 30 years ago, I may not have had that attitude. I don't know. Not anymore.
So Kristin, I've got one more question, and at the, potential to open up a can of worms here, or maybe not, but keeping in mind who generally listens to this podcast, which I do have a lot of private music instructors and music school owners. And what would you say is the best way for private instructors or studio owners to work with the school band directors and the music teachers?
Like what framework are you talking about? Like just communication wise, or
you just mentioned the example of private instructor specific to one of your students who is coming into your program. I guess from a different perspective, I mean, obviously for me, we teach different instruments at my school, right? So, but I'm incredibly supportive of what you do. I'm incredibly supportive of what Mandy's husband does in his classroom, and going back to that idea of like these kind of invisible barriers and these invisible like beliefs about, well, this is how things are done in this room, in this setting, and this is how things are done in this setting. I'm in the spirit of like an abundance mindset, right? And not a competitive mindset. Even if it was just to say like a private instructor wanting to introduce themselves to someone like you and just say like, hey, I'm here to help, if ever you need anything or something like that. I don't know.
I always love knowing the private teachers in the area because then I can obviously like send students their way if they wish. The one thing I find is sometimes the philosophies are different because of that. Like, we've been in the trenches for so many years, and I have loosened up from my training, and I have started to. I haven't started to. I do understand the students and the culture and the society and the families, and all of that has changed for me. So I just feel like sometimes there's a disconnect with the private teachers' understanding of like a 12-year-old student and their world. And I wish that they could, I don't want to say come down to their level, but I feel like they are sort of up here still a little bit, which I can understand and I can appreciate because I've been there, to know that they're teaching students who like you said earlier, are probably not going to be professional musicians, but they should be learning. If they want them to be learning, they should be learning what they need to learn, but it should be fun. And knowing like what you're doing to support us, I'm dealing with the masses. And I've taught private lessons, and there is a beauty to that private lesson experience. It's awesome. And it's so individualistic and so hands-on, but knowing that like we're dealing with this wild, crazy ship that's sometimes almost near impossible to steer, you know? And so I want that relationship, but I think understanding like where 12-year-old's mentality is at, depending on the kid, you know, how they can be really supportive and useful and helpful. But
So they should just reach out and say hi, huh?
yes. Oh my gosh. I've had several, like they'll email, they'll figure out like what the schools are. And that's hard too, because you have to figure out who the schools are and what the teachers are or whatever. But if they're reaching out and just saying, hey, I'm available. We have instructors that come in that we pay separately, like I have a booster account or whatever, that we just whenever we need somebody, we're like, oh, you know, we could use some help on this instrument this week. And we've got a smattering of people that we always kind of call upon. But that is always like, I welcome people in my band room. I know not everybody does, but I feel like that is partly my secret weapon is having extra helpers come in and support us because I am dealing with the masses and it's hard, you know, it can be really, really really challenging. So I think if they just reached out to the local teachers and just said, hey, whatever they're willing to help with or do, usually most of us are pretty interested in that help and support. So
that's great. So Mandy, did you have any other questions for Kristin? Because I think like the last couple of things that she said were fantastic.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so great. Kristin, I think the work that you do is really important and you're really great at it.
Thanks
for what you do.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So, well, then we'll wrap this episode of Rock School Proprietor Podcast and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you have topic suggestions or questions, please contact us at info@rockschoolproprietor.com. We'd love to hear from you and hear suggestions for future shows. We've put together some free resources for teachers and studio owners over at rockschoolproprietor.com and a private Facebook group called The Modern Music School. Please join us over there. On social, I'm at rock.school.proprietor on Instagram and John Kazicki on both LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Your ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are always appreciated. And if you enjoyed the show and gain insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. All we ask in return is that you pay it forward and please share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.